Morning, everyone. Today is the 22nd of May. It's another Monday. And it's another weekly market forecast analysis that we do. So welcome. My name is Pedro. I'm the senior market analyst at Alphachain. And during this session, usually we take a look at what happened last week in terms of the big news events that affected the market, and then how did the market reacted during last week. And of course, paying attention already to this week that we have ahead of us. So paying attention as well to the biggest catalysts that can affect the market and how should we position ourselves accordingly, and to look for the best opportunities and maybe what direction is the market going to. Usually we take a look at FX. So we always start with the dollar index, then the major indices with Nasdaq, S&P, Dow, DAX usually, and then of course we go a little bit into each individual currency pair. Also then looking at commodities including gold, oil, finishing with looking at crypto, Bitcoin and Ethereum as well, to see how the market is reacting and what's going on in the crypto space. So so looking in here at what happened last week. So the biggest elephant in the room, it has been a little bit the debt ceiling negotiation that goes within the Democrats and the Republicans. Last week, there were a couple of meetings going on between Fed Chair Powell on the Democrats, and then also the House, one second, the House Speaker Republican Kevin McCarthy. It looks like it was going in a good way, with some positive talks and commenting and commentary to the public. Mentioned that maybe a deal would be reached by the beginning of this week. However, apparently last Friday there was a turnaround. Maybe, or they may say that since Joe Biden was actually away, because there was a G7 meeting going on in Hiroshima in Japan, and apparently it stalled a little bit negotiations between both parties regarding the debt ceiling. Now, the Janet Yellen has mentioned quite a few times that looks like the deadline before it entering into default, it's kind of beginning of June. So looking at maybe the 1st of June. So by then we need, or kind of the US needs to come up with an agreement between both parties to increase the debt ceiling. Otherwise, the US is going to get into default and not going to be able to pay their bills. So today, actually, it is expecting another meeting to happen. So let's see. Of course, this is a power move that you are working in between both parties, trying to negotiate as much as possible. Most likely, what we are going to see is the delay of reaching to an agreement until last minute, and hopefully everything's going to be sorted maybe by the end of this week, maximum by the beginning of next week, which is still end of May last week. So in between that, we are going to see volatility in the market. And we actually saw with the commentary of good talks, for example, last week, we saw a big rally in the US market, in particular Nasdaq, which managed to break those highs from August, which we're going to take a look in a bit. So yes, so basically risk-on assets have been in play, in particular last week. So let's see if that's going to continue or not during this week. Looking at the macro data, last week it was quiet, especially regarding the US. We had a little bit of data, more, for example, in the UK, we had unemployment, which was much worse than expected. I think we minus 163,000 jobs, if I'm not mistaken, with an increase of the claimant count to 46.7, when we had unemployment increasing to 3.9%. Then we also had unemployment in Australia, which was also negative, comparing what it was expected in the previous month. So yeah, that's basically in terms of the employment. We had CPI in Canada, which was a little bit as expected. So nothing much in there. And that was basically it in terms of the biggest news that we had last week. That was it. Looking at the US in particular, we had retail sales. It was okay, comparing with the previous month. And we had the market reacting positively in that sense. And then we finished actually the week, in particular, with the Fed Chair Powell that was commenting in a conference that was also attended by Ben Bernanke, an ex Fed Chair, Fed Chair. And both of them, they were commenting in the current situations of the Fed. There was some commentary from the Fed Chair Powell in that conference, and basically it was a little bit more of the same. But in particular, something to look at is actually there was a commentary that Fed Chair Powell was saying in the previous meetings, in the previous FOMC meetings, which was about doing too much or doing too little, and what was the approach that the Fed was looking into. So in the previous months, they was actually looking for, or the approach was to do, it was better to go harder than actually to go softer and to do more than to do little in regards to fighting the inflation, right? It was better to kind of maybe go a step more than it should, but then there was maybe ways to control it instead of just doing too little and never really managing to have the inflation under control. However, that has been that sentence basically now is different. You mentioned that now it's becoming more balanced, and that goes into the direction that most likely there's not going to be another rate hike. And that's basically what the market has interpreted by those comments. If we take a look into the Fed Watch, just the day before this so on Thursday, the day before that it happened, this commentary from the Fed Chair Powell, the probability it was around 36%, right? So it was about 66 to 34%, something like that, in terms of the likelihood of another hike in the next meeting. And this has changed literally now. After that commentary, for example, it went all the way down to 17 once again, right? Of course, in the same token, to continue to be macro dependent. However, the hint that Fed Chair Powell mentioned, it was exactly that. He's more looking for a pause now. I think they've come along a long way since all these hikes. Also mentioning that the real effect in the economy is lagging based on everything that they've been doing and actually how the economy is going to react to all these hikes. So we'll see what exactly is going to happen, but I think and likelihood is going to be for the peak maybe to be in place at this point. Then the next question, it will be, when are you going to start to see any rate cuts? And that's maybe the main divergence between what the market's expecting and maybe what the Fed is going to do. Because at the same time, you still mentioned, yes, the inflation is still quite high based on the Fed's expectations, and so they need to continue to fight it in that regard. And that leads into this week data points. So we are going to have tomorrow full day with the manufacturing PMIs and services PMI around Euro, UK, and the US. So expect some volatility tomorrow across the different markets, different countries. Manufacturing has been below 50, so it's showing a little bit of contraction. But however, the fast services PMI is actually above 50. So let's see what kind of numbers we are going to have tomorrow. If there's going to be any big change or not. Actually, in the US, it's maybe the only one that the manufacturing actually managed to stay a little bit above 50. It was below 50 since October last year, and it managed to stay at 50.4 last month. So let's see if the trend kind of continues now to be positive and not negative. But the services PMI has actually been quite positive. So that's going to be, and expect a volatile day tomorrow. Then you're going to have GDP quarter to quarter. This is kind of the second time that a data point is going to come out from the GDP. Usually there are three announcements. First is advance. This is kind of when everything is a little bit more uncertain. So usually it's a little bit more volatile maybe than the next the next two. Then is the preliminary, a little bit maybe more real, and then the final one, most likely the expectation is going to be exactly already as a reality, because there's been already kind of three revisions between that took time to get to this point. Then, of course, another big point is the unemployment claims every Thursday. This is actually quite interesting because we had a really strong one 2 weeks ago, going all the way to 264K. However, last week it was actually back into the range, right? Since the beginning of May, that we have been a little bit in this range between 220 to maybe 240, 250. Then we had that big spike 2 weeks ago to 264, but then we are back into this range. And this is maybe the new norm between 220 to 240, 250. Apparently, the market is expecting 249 for next week. And then to finalize with core PCE, which is the favorite inflation metric that the Fed looks at, expecting to be at 4.6, to kind of remain unchanged with on a monthly basis at 0.3%. All this data regarding to the inflation has been losing a little bit of its own power in terms of how market reacts towards it, especially now that we are looking for the Fed to start not making any changes in the interest rate. So of course it's still it's an important topic, and the market still pays attention to it, but it's quite different comparing with last year or even the beginning of this year. So yes, expect volatility, however, nothing much. Looking in other countries, we have also an interest rate decision in New Zealand that can go and actually have, if they actually hike another 25 basis points as it is expected, it can go all the way to 5.5%, and to make New Zealand as with the highest interest rate comparing with the other major countries, with the US being in second with 5.25, and as you mentioned, with a high probability that it's not going to hike again. And then we have also CPI in the UK, and this is going to be quite interesting to see if the UK finally managed to bring the CPI, the inflation data, below the 2 digits. It has been above the two digits all the way since August last summer. It has been almost 1 year, 9 months with CPI this high above the 2 digits, and most likely let's see if you finally have this reduction, and the market is expecting to be at 8.2% in here. So let's see if that's going to happen or not. And that's basically it in terms of the major news event. So looking at the debt ceiling to see if you get to an agreement in there. Looking at manufacturing and services PMI tomorrow. Looking at the Fed minutes, forgot about that one. So there's going to be the Fed minutes regarding to the previous meeting on the 2nd of May. It's going to be released this Wednesday at 7 p.m. So this can maybe lead into more kind of confirmation that the Fed is actually looking for a pause now in interest rates. And there you go. And then we have the core PCE by the end of the week. So that's the biggest data points that you're going to be looking at. Looking at the market and how the market has been reacting without this information that I just shared. So looking at the dollar, and we start with the dollar, we have seen the dollar moving to the upside, right? So basically the last couple of weeks, we have seen the dollar rising, which was something that we are looking for, right? Especially since we had a little bit of this break above the trend line, breaking also these highs in here, and the way price was moving away, it was a really nice, interesting level to look for a long, with the target being the other extreme of this trend line. In this case, we call it compression, all the way until here, right? There's a little bit of a space between between this high and those in that level. And that was the initial target that we were looking for, right? So the high probability target, it was in here. When price gets to this level, now is a question mark of trying to find out if this level by any chance is going to manage to hold price down and price eventually starts to move down again, or if you start breaking above this, especially above this high, there's maybe another hike to look for, and price may even go all the way eventually back to this level, beginning of March, right? So that's something to keep an eye on. If you manage to create a new high for this week, and especially if you do go above that that zone, we may then continue to go higher. Now, it doesn't mean that price will just skyrocket from there. It doesn't mean that price will just break and kind of do this. Price actually could break and then can actually have that deeper retrace before maybe continuing. But if you do break above this level, I think we can see a little bit more bullish setups in the future for the dollar. If not, if price by any chance actually now breaks this below this level, you may actually start opening doors to go and actually maybe have a deeper retracement towards these lows, which can maybe be there or could be a little bit in here before maybe continue to go higher. Yeah, that's kind of what a little bit of the levels that you're going to be looking at for this week. We could, for example, even break below this low and then maybe even fake out a little bit this level top into that level, which is a little bit maybe above it, and then actually go down after that. So we could actually do something like that, just as an idea and something to look at in here. So yeah, that was something on the dollar that you're looking for. So the target that you're looking since last week or since kind of 2 weeks ago, that has been reached, and now we're going to be paying attention what may happen next. Now we take a look at the indices, and this is the interesting part, right? They have been quite bullish, a really strong momentum this couple of weeks, in particular with Nasdaq and S&P also managing to break finally away from this structure, this zone of resistance, in particular this high in here that has been managing to hold price for a couple of months or so, and now we finally get a little bit closer to these highs in here from August, right? So these actually are the highs that Nasdaq just broke last week. So everything, it gets into an interesting dynamic now. We need to start paying attention to what are the next key levels in the indices. Nasdaq for now, S&P for now, I'm still going to be looking within this level for a potential reaction from there, and first and foremost also to try to see what kind of approach you're going to have towards that level. Even have a little bit of a zone in here. If price by any chance wants to go there and maybe continue to the upside, you can maybe even draw some kind of trend lines as well to eventually see if we do have a break of a trend line that can help. So if by any chance you're looking to look for a reversal in here, you don't need to rush into it. You can actually wait for price actually to start giving that information before maybe rushing into it, right? A little bit similar to what happened on the Nasdaq. Even if you had been bearish and expecting maybe price to respect that high from August, maybe there was a little bit of a few opportunities intraday, but in terms of the bigger reversal, there was not exactly the setup in there because price never really broke the key levels that maybe it needed to do so. Intraday, maybe this is actually a good level. So far, the good reaction so far on that this high is reacting from is actually quite good. There's actually a gap in there that price reacted from. There was a gap in here between the opening, the close and the opening of the week, all the way from August last year. And then there's maybe a few other levels to look for if price by any chance wants to continue to go higher. Now there are a few clues in here that may be hinting for a potential reversal. But let's see. Of course, if this situation with the debt ceiling continues to be a concern, maybe, or if they continue to delay it all the way until the last minute, maybe we're going to see a little bit of negative volatility in the indices. If by any chance, if they do reach an agreement, maybe we're going to see these indices continue to rise. in here. So that's S&P. If we take a look at the Nasdaq, here we are. So we managed to break above that level, as we were talking before. There was not exactly, there was maybe a slight break of a low in here, but aside from that, as you can see, even if you just draw this trend line, there's never a break below of this trend line that could have given the trigger to actually start looking for maybe a deeper reversal. That never happened. Not even the break of this low ever happened neither. And when we're still kind of underneath this these highs. So if you're looking at as a double sell, for example, you didn't have the confirmation. There was no trigger in there to look for that. Quite the opposite. It was actually to continue to gain momentum in here. So now here we are, going all the way back to react from April 2021. This is a good level, previous level support resistance, and then there's even a chance to continue, maybe to go a little bit higher. And this level can be quite interesting, respecting this previous level support resistance above all these 3-4 highs into there. However, this level actually where price already reacted from. It was a little bit of a zone in there to look for, and now maybe there's a little bit above that, and then maybe a little bit even above that as well. So now we need to wait and to see. For example, pay attention as well to these levels of structure that are created in here. If price by any chance starts breaking new lows, then maybe can have a little bit of a change of direction. Aside from that, if price just continues to respect the levels, anytime it retraces, maybe the bullish momentum hasn't stopped just yet. So that's something to keep an eye on. There's no need to rush. If by any chance you are looking for reversals, if you are looking for continuation, just wait for the trigger. Also, you don't need to try to get long when you see big momentum. You can actually wait a little bit for the retracement before maybe getting a better entry. So yeah, that's something just to keep an eye on Nasdaq, which has been really impressive during this couple of weeks. And then you have Dow as well. Again, moving a little bit differently comparing with the other ones. On the other hand, if you actually compare, Dow actually had broken already that high from August that you're looking for. You had actually broken that level back in December last year. So Dow actually has done that already, and now it's kind of in a different phase already, way actually advanced comparing with the other indices. The Dow, quite interesting, managed to respect a little bit its low, but I'm still looking for a potential opportunity whenever price gets into this level for a potential sell opportunity. We'll see if that's going to happen. We'll see what the Dow is going to do within this range as well. So, yep, let's see what's going to happen in here. And then, interesting enough, we have DAX, which actually broke new all-time highs, right? It fake out this double top so far. We managed to break it. It was created back in the beginning of 2021 in January, 1 year ago. So here we are, recovered all the way through. It looks like it was a little bit in this bearish momentum. We managed to respect this level, and now resuming the move to the upside, and we actually now managed to create new all-time highs in here. So let's see what's going to happen next. What kind of opportunities we are going to have in here, and if by any chance we're going to resume the move to the upside, which we may create that, or by any chance we're going to start having a little bit of a retracement. So interesting times in here. Yep, how the indices are managing to continue to break new highs and be so bullish when not everything is still kind of proper, and actually seeing some struggles, even increase on the employment and so on. So yeah, the market usually tends to be ahead of what actually the economy is going to eventually be. So let's see what's going to happen next, and what kind of opportunities. It's always a little bit harder if you don't have anything on the left side to look for a potential zone for price to react from, and at this point, this is where we are, because it's just creating new all-time highs in here. So let's see what's going to happen. What's going to happen next? Another one that we look for is going to be the other indices. In this case, the currency indices. We are looking at Euro index. And here we are. So we have been bearish all the way. We started to be bearish even before the ECB press conference. Prices moved down, it's reached one of the targets and actually reached kind of the second level that we could still, we are actually looking for a potential reaction from here, a little bit of a retracement in alignment with without this previous level of support resistance into this level in here. So that's kind of where we're looking for price to have a little bit of a reaction after this bearish move that we had. So let's see now how price is going to react from here. It's literally in the range for the last couple of, basically for the last week or so. Price has been in this range in here, like the euro pairs. We have seen some movements. We have seen the euro dollar, for example, moving down, but then on the other hand, we may have seen other euro pairs moving upwards, for example, euro yen moving to the upside, right? So it hasn't really been a euro move that has affected the market. It's more of a mix, and that's why we see this euro index ranging in this moment. Now, I would maybe become a little bit more bullish if we do break above these highs. As long as we kind of keep respecting this level, maybe we're going to continue to see a little bit more momentum to the downside. We do have quite a few lows now being created in here, so this can create a little bit of liquidity in here for price maybe to react from and maybe go higher. So let's see which direction actually we break first, if it's above or below, and then we need to take decisions or kind of position ourselves accordingly to that. So let's see if this week this euro index managed to move away from that level. And then we have the yen index, right? So the yen index has been quite volatile. We managed to respect, so we are kind of in this bearish move, right? So as you can see, we managed to break kind of these lows, then we managed to break again this low in here, and we didn't really manage to break any highs, right? So at this point, price respected both highs in there. In that sense, maybe we could expect to see a little bit more of another bearish move. Overall, I actually think that price eventually wants to go a little bit lower, even towards that level, or even my favorites actually a little bit underneath that. So I wouldn't be surprised if by any chance the yen index wants to do that. However, there's still the possibility of price deciding to go and start to be trading within this range. For example, if you do break above this level, maybe we can eventually go all the way back, maybe close to retest this triple top again, or even just retesting this zone in here. It's a zone to look for as well, this previous level support resistance. That can be interesting as well to see how price is going to react from there. And if that happens, if you do see a little bit of a strength in here on the yen, maybe we're going to see euro yen, dollar yen, Aussie yen, and so on actually moving to the downside, right? So again, you can position yourself by looking at the indices, and this can be a really good confluence to make decisions then on the individual currency pairs. So yes, there is that potential to resume and maybe retest at the low top, or then eventually to just resume to move to the downside into maybe this level or the next level before we go higher. So looking at the individual currency pairs, right, we have the euro dollar is the one that we're going to start with. Euro dollar, similar to the dollar yen, kind of the opposite, has been kind of moving down, and now we reached a little bit of a good level to look for a reaction, just similar to dollar index, right? It's reacting from that zone. Euro dollar is reacting from this previous level support resistance. It's quite strong, and maybe this is the level that we are going to see a little bit of a retracement, since the euro has been kind of moving down all the way since the beginning of the month. So almost for 18 days or so that we have been noticing the euro moving down. So let's see if this is the level that you're going to see a little bit of a move upwards, maybe correcting, maybe even approaching this level once again, or if by any chance, if price doesn't even manage to break above these levels, maybe we're going to resume the move down, maybe even going all the way back below this low, maybe reacting a little bit from this next level of support resistance. So that's something to keep an eye on the euro in here, right? So let's see what's going to happen on euro dollar. Then we have the pound dollar, which has been moving a little bit similar, right? We have been looking for, we have been bearish as well just before the BOE interest rate decision. So that has been happening. All this compression has been completed. This was one of the lows that we were still looking for price to react from. It was still fresh. If price by any chance breaks below this level, I think we are free to go maybe out the way until maybe this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 5, 1. On the daily time frame, that's actually kind of an interesting level below all these lows, and this is kind of where we are looking for. Maybe for the pound dollar to get to, right? So let's see what's going to happen if we're going to have price moving down or not. Yeah, or if you're going to have a little bit of a correction now with price also respecting this level and going a little bit higher. So continuing, we are looking at the Aussie dollar. Aussie has been quite interesting as well. Super range market has been kind of one of the weakest comparing with the dollar. Never really managed to move away from this range during all these last 2-3 months. Are we going to eventually break below these lows? Perhaps, or are we going to kind of resume the move again and getting closer to these highs? Again, we have kind of managing to create slightly new highs, but the level that we are reacting from is still within the same zone. So there's not exactly an engulf upwards at this point. On the other hand, we actually managed to break below this low. So maybe we eventually could see Aussie to continue to move to the downside. But for that to happen, we do need kind of to break below this level once again. There's even maybe something in here for price to react from if it wants to continue. So there you go, Aussie. Let's see what's going to happen with around this zone in here on the at the lows. Yeah, so continuing, next we check the dollar yen. Right, dollar yen has been quite bullish, as we covered last week. Since price never managed to break below this level and actually respected quite nicely this level in here. Eventually, we're looking for these highs to be broken. So instead of price respecting it, we're actually looking for price to continue to move to the upside. And aside from this high, we also had all these highs next to it. So eventually to take everything in here and maybe getting a little bit closer to this level in there before maybe looking for a reaction. Now, some reaction has already happened, and price actually kind of reached already one of its targets, which was basically retesting this previous level of support resistance, in this case, also this demand zone. So now the question mark on the dollar yen is going to be exactly this. Are you going to, is this level going to hold price and price will going to resume again the move to the upside, or by any chance this level is going to be broken, which may open a little bit more doors to the downside, and then we can actually look for opportunities. Even by any chance, if you retrace once again towards this level, maybe you can even look again for another sell in here, because maybe then price can go even much lower than that. So again, question mark, are you going to hold this level or not? It's a little bit similar to the yen index. If you pay attention to it, it's kind of about if the yen index breaks those highs, it may actually go higher. And in this case, most likely this dollar yen is going to break below and then kind of go lower. So in here, there's maybe still opportunities. On the other hand, you can also try to investigate, even in here on the left side, price is reacting from here. If there's anything a little bit above it that price could go and react from before maybe moving down. Yeah, so that's a little bit for the yen dollar. On the other hand, for example, we have Aussie yen, which is also reacting from a really nice and interesting level in here. So there's maybe a little bit more room to the downside. Even if you go and approach that level again, there's maybe something like this to happen. Euro yen, which is it has a little bit of a difference between the dollar yen, because Euro yen actually managed to break below this level. Dollar yen respected it. Meanwhile, dollar yen already broke this high, and Euro yen is still kind of in here. So question mark as well. Are you going to kind of move away now a little bit to this level, or eventually you're going to just compress all the way into here, maybe until kind of look for another sell opportunity? This level in here for me, it's a little bit of a move down. So it's maybe another yen pair that may go down, which is similar to maybe possibility on dollar yen, on Aussie yen, Euro yen, and pound yen as well, which is kind of managing to break new highs, but let's see if this actually holds or not. Otherwise, we may open the door to go much farther down, and maybe looking for here or eventually towards there. That can be a possibility as well, right? So let's see what's going to happen in here on this pound yen as well. So yeah, I think the yen index can give a great clue of what to expect next on these yen pairs. And then we have CAD, right? CAD has been in a range. It hasn't really moved that much. This week kind of just stayed within this level. We have been in this bigger range, even kind of all the way. We've been basically trading within this level. Then we created a new one somewhere in here, and now kind of it just spent the week in here. So let's see, right? There's a little bit more zones above or below. If by any chance, if you come back in here, are you going to hold price again and kind of push it again and kind of keep respecting all this previous level of support, or eventually are going to break below that? Or are you going to just continue to go higher and getting a little bit closer to that level? That's a little bit of what we have seen on the CAD. A lot of indecision in here as well. So if you like range markets, maybe the CAD, this dollar CAD can be an opportunity for you to look for setups. Personally, I even look at Euro CAD or Pound CAD as better pairs to look for if by any chance you want to trade anything related to the CAD. Because look at this, it's much more clear the trend that we have been seeing in here, and the opportunities that we have comparing with the dollar CAD, which is just a range, right? And this is where sometimes it's interesting to pay attention to also other related pairs that may actually offer you better opportunities than the major one that is more common to trade. Right, so it's something to keep an eye on. The Pound CAD as well, kind of similar setup in there. And then we have dollar franc Swiss. We have been quite bullish for weeks from now, for a couple of weeks, all the way since the beginning of May, and price basically reached one of its first targets, which was the retest of this previous level of support resistance. So as you can see, you had a really strong level of support somewhere in alignment with this level, and now price basically reached that zone in there, and now we can see the reaction that we have in here. So question mark is, what are you going to look for? I'm still looking for a potential zone whenever price goes below these lows for a potential long in there. So somewhere in here, and of course depends on how price is going to react from it. There's maybe a few zones in here that price could hold, but it looks quite strong bearish. A lot of this has been compressed by now, so maybe you can look for another continuation in here to the downside until maybe price gets there. Of course, whatever the dollar is going to do, it may help this dollar franc Swiss to then do the same. So yeah, I could see a little bit more bearish in here until maybe price goes higher. So let's see what's going to happen on dollar franc Swiss in here as well. Gold has been correcting. Now that the dollar is correcting, gold has been doing the opposite, so going higher. It also reached one of our first targets, so we were kind of bearish all the way since we actually had this break of a low. So we could have looked for potential sell opportunities in here. One of the first targets was exactly this level, and the second target was in here, right? For price to go below this low, compressing out this and reaching to this level. And that's basically where price now is reacting from. So next level maybe to look for, maybe something in here. Of course, something in here as well. It's important for gold to break through. Then we can go a little bit higher towards that level, and let's see what's going to happen. What's going to happen next in here? Bigger picture, we actually managed to break this low, so this can eventually read a little bit more to the downside. But interesting enough, the main move that we're looking for that has already happened, and then the reaction from it also, it's basically already happening as well, with price reacting from there. This was a beautiful opportunity last Friday to look for a long on gold, and maybe we can actually continue to move much higher from here. Also keeping an eye on what the dollar may do, it's also important. And then we have oil. Oil has been kind of in a ranging move all the way, basically since we had that big spike down Then we have a little bit of a range in here, and now price basically is trading underneath this previous level support that makes resistance, and all the way also in alignment with this level in here. So let's see what's going to happen next. Are we going to manage to break above this level or below this level, keeping an eye still, or maybe another level just above this highs to keep an eye on, or something in here also? It can be interesting if by any chance price wants to expand a little bit more this range that it has been trading recently, all the way from basically 69 to 73, 74. So let's see what's going to happen. What's going to happen next? And then to complete, we're going to take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? So this is where we are. After that big bearish momentum that we had also last week, then we're starting to get into this range in here. So this is where we are at this point. We need to see what's going to happen next. So we can see that price has been moving in this range. Bigger picture, it's actually moving down. And curious to see if price eventually is going to get actually to this 25 to 100 mark, or are we going to see a little bit of momentum? We just took these massive lows on the 12th of May. Now we are ranging a little bit. So is this accumulation, or is going to have another move down? Maybe we're testing this really strong zone of previous resistance that can work as support. So that's something to keep an eye on BTC. We are within this level. There's maybe even a little bit more underneath this level that you can see as well. But if you do break above this level in here, if you break above this 27,600, then maybe we can try to aim to go a little bit higher. Again, maybe retesting this level in here, this previous level of structure. So basically, we are basically within this level in here as well. We can kind of try to look at the market a little bit in between ranges. Yes, the break above this level most likely can see a little bit more to the upside. If you do break a little bit below this level, we can even see price getting a little bit more closer to here. So let's see what's going to happen, or if we're going to just continue to have another ranging market and a ranging week for this week ahead. And then we have Ethereum, right? Ethereum is almost the same. So it reached one of our targets that we're looking for this bearish move. It was exactly in there. And now kind of this is the high as well that we need to keep an eye on. So is price going to break above it and maybe resume to move a little bit to the upside, or by any chance is going to respect still this level and continue to move a little bit more to the downside? So let's see what's going to happen next in here on Ethereum as well, if we gain some momentum or not. So keeping an eye on that one as well, right? Otherwise, just keep trading these ranges. Manage your own expectations for the target that you're looking for. That can be important. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, feel free to leave any comments in the comment session, and I'll see you next week. Have a good one. Bye bye.